Welcome to Enterprise Design's Industry Insights, where we identify key topics in the commercial real estate industry. I'm Ann Weston, Director of Design Services.
And I'm Jessica Green, Director of Client Services. For this series, we're discussing market trends with Dallas-based commercial real estate professionals. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. For this series, we're focusing on the topic on key issues for tenants and their representation.
Grant, what are the biggest challenges you are facing with finding space for your tenant?
So our business is pretty much bifurcated between two segments. We have an industrial and an office expertise that we focus on, and they're two drastically different challenges right now, trying to find space. So industrial, we're out of space. We can't find space fast enough, and the options are limited. They're expensive, and it's highly competitive. The office segment is still competitive, but through pandemic, we went through a whole lag for 18 months. And so now what we're seeing is landlords really trying to entice tenants to come to the building and various buckets of concessions. And so we are seeing that turn back to a more competitive landscape, but just two different challenges in both segments. I don't know if Ryan has anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think like Grant said, the industrial space it's impossible to find space for those users right now. The office space, I would say that many of our clients are looking for an improvement in the space that they had, and so that flight to quality has been harder to find as well. Some of that office space has been harder to find.
So with some of these, this is kind of an off-topic question, but speaking of industrial, with some of these clients that you're having that they can't find the space, what are you kind of telling them? Is it are you guys seeing a lot of construction underway for a lot of these industrial buildings, or what are they doing with their current space right now?
We just finished an acquisition with a group looking to buy an industrial building that we were really sent on the mission over 15 months ago. And so it took 15 months and an expanded search area of what they originally said. They said, we want to be here within 2 miles. We ended up expanding it to 10 miles, and we captured a building on the fringe that they considered because of their need. It was a dire need for their company to grab the space. And so 5-6 years ago, by way of example, if you had a 50 to 100,000 foot industrial transaction, you had a myriad of options. You couldn't count them on both hands and feet. When we did a search for a simple 50,000 foot box, we found 5 options in the same submarket several years later. And so it just shows the shrinking supply of what industrial is.
Yeah, I think developers are trying to bring product to market as fast as they can. And so there will be product eventually, but for now we're in this place where it's hard to find. So our clients are, like Grant said, expanding their search, looking in areas that they weren't necessarily focused on initially, cobbling space together. So they thought they needed, they wanted 15,000 feet, but they're just going to piecemeal 5s and 10s together to get to that. So they're just having to make adjustments that they wouldn't have 5 years ago.
Well, and with the developer, I know that there are some, jurisdictions in some areas that have controlled growth. So, I've also seen that, a development may be underway, but it may stall out based on the controlled growth of that area that it was intended for. So deals may not happen because, a place that was supposed to be built and, be underway may not happen for at least another 5-10 years.
Wait, so you're saying there's delays in construction? Is that what you...
Delays in construction, but not just due to lead times.
Well, I guess kind of kicking off on that, Ryan, I'll start with you and Grant can pitch in. Are you seeing that deals are taking longer to execute? If so, why? I know we're kind of touching on it a little bit, but just kind of...
Yeah, I would say yes, they are. Number one, the search has taken some time, but then once we find the building, negotiate the lease, get into that process, it is taking longer, and it really bogs down around the construction piece and finding out how much is this going to cost before we make this 5, 7, 10-year commitment. That there has been a major slowdown. It's just taking longer to get those numbers back from subs and contractors, but then there's also a bit of a shock of, whoa, it's going to cost us this much, and now we have to think through this, a bit more. So yeah, I would say there's definitely a delay.
Is legal Any involved with legal taking longer? Or
No,
is that not
I mean, our
really?
partner counsels are always great about turning things around quickly because they know time's of the essence for our client. So it's not really so much legal. It truly is construction. I mean, this is a micro discussion for a macro issue really
Right.
at large right now because the micro side of it is, we have 10 or 15 clients we're representing at one time between the two of us. And so we see it on all of our deals from 2,000 feet up to 20 or greater on the office side. And what's going to happen is we are seeing tenants saying no. And when they say no and they don't do the deal, the landlord does not get the business. The general contractor also does not get the business. And so it's this trickle down or trickle up effect that something's got to give, and it's got to be construction pricing because it affects landlords' rates that they charge. They have to raise their rates to get the TI met. Lenders are only approving a certain amount of TI to even distribute to the tenants. And so there's just all of these forces fighting against each other right now that are making our job very difficult. And I mean, our job is to advise the client. And we said, hey, if you want this space, you're now going to have to truly pay for it, where 5 years ago, it was landlord TIs were healthy enough to have a budget and then some to maybe pay for some ancillary costs. So,
Yeah, the landlord is only going to go to a certain point, right? And so then the tenant has to make the decision on, are we going to cover that delta? And like Grant said, there are tenants who are saying, no, we're not going to do that. So do they revise their plans, adjust down to get inside of scope? Or do they say, pencils down, we're going to think of something else, we're going to go to another location? And so that all of that causes the delay.
Are you seeing any difference between the local groups or the groups that are actually from out of state that are coming here, and a difference between the time it takes to make a deal there? I think one of the things that came up recently is that, if you have someone that's out of state, they may do more tours, or they might tour the same space multiple times, which wouldn't have happened with a local group because they just don't have all of the entities here to do that first tour. Are you seeing any of that?
So the majority of our business is local. We're not calling on companies outside of the state necessarily. But yeah, I don't know if you've seen anything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a way to answer that question would be, we represented a $1 billion company that was backed by Mitsubishi with Equipment Depot. They made their leasing decision industrial within 45 days. They toured the facility 2 or 3 times within a course of a week to 10 days. And they knew what they want. They were well capitalized. They had a big balance sheet, and they were willing to invest in the facility. I think what Ryan was kind of hinting at is that you have these small to mid-sized companies up to about, we represent companies, we'll represent as big as we can grow them. But generally, by the time they get to about 250 people, they're selling to a bigger entity that could be global, that's represented by somebody else out of another part of the country. So when we get these small to mid sizes in here, it's taking multiple tours, multiple levels of thought, right, wrong, or indifferent. I mean, it's all relative with cash and balance sheet, but their balance sheet isn't as strong as the $1 billion company, and so that's what's causing the deal fatigue at the small to medium sized business. But when you look at an office building, it's really comprised of small to medium-sized tenants. It's not all full floor tenants. So office landlords need these small to medium-sized deals to keep their building alive. So, but those are two just polar opposite examples of big, well-capitalized, small to mid-sized growing, conservative with their cash.
Well, and on Equipment Depot, so they made a decision in 45 days because we found the one location that worked for them, and they realized we need to move quick. This industrial market's crazy. So they moved on it. They jumped on it.
Great.
That's awesome.
So what are the most helpful tools, research, or advice from vendors that play an important role in guiding your clients?
I think one thing that's helpful is guiding our clients to know what to do with their space in this post-pandemic world, right? And so what are the new trends? How are people using their offices? Are they hoteling their desks? So there's still some confusion on what that looks like. And so any of the research that we get from partners like you guys to help us think about, okay, how do we go reconfigure the space that we had? Or if we're going to go start afresh and with new space, how do we build it properly to get those to get our workers back into the space.
The vendors and tools specifically, I was going to put back on you guys and say, this is why we lean on you. I mean, we've worked with a handful of architectural groups in design that have led our clients, not intentionally down the wrong path, but they have the highest end treatments to everything. And you get the bid back and you're like, how is this $55 a foot over? Oh, we used, acoustic sound batting and all these things where our client just really needed kind of a vanilla with chocolate finish,
Right.
And so I think having like a vendor between the architect and design partner and the general contractor saying, okay, best in class, highest in cost, achieves the same look, but you're going to save X. I mean, that's what we're having to lean on everybody around us to help really tell the client, this is your team. I know we're representing you and they may be paying your design fees, but we're all trying to help you save money, get the look you want, and get in the space on time. So, I mean, it's a total team effort right now with all hands on deck.
Yeah, and for us, we definitely want to make sure that we are being a good team, a good partner, transparent
open.
about all of it, and also having those conversations with the client up front about what is most important to them, what are, the key things for them, are there key areas, are, there things for their culture that are really important to them, so that we can focus on those things. And, if they have a budget in mind, that we know that up front so we can design to that.
Right.
And, if there are spaces that, we can still make it look nice, but not, on the high end as far as a price point goes, just communicating all of that is really beneficial for us, and having those conversations up front, even, with the GC in the space planning stages of everything, getting rough order magnitude numbers from them is really important as well, to kind of gauge that expectation. And I know it's really hard for them to get a price off of a space plan, but if we can associate, maybe it's $75 a square foot in this space, and this area over here is maybe $95 a square foot, and then they can kind of balance and see what that comes out to.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's the challenge. I mean, in lieu of developing a full set of CDs right now that are permit ready, so we get the most accurate bid. I mean, we're trying to do extensive pricing notes to basically lead the GC to water to tell us within 10%. Plus or minus that this is going to be a good pre-bid, because most of the time you're right, it's just been kind of fly by the seat of your pants for all GCs and go, oh, I mean, I just did a job like this and it was $60, and then you bid it and it's $85. Well, I didn't know you had this, and this.
Right.
So those are the things that we try to eliminate, but it's hard right now.
It is hard.
Well, and that gets back to a little bit of the delay, right? So if we're going to try to get to solid numbers, then it's just going to take longer. Got to go through more steps to get to that number.
And time hurts. I mean, it's been since I've been in the business. Time hurts and heals deals, and it generally hurts. I mean, it generally hurts. And so I think time is always of the essence. And I mean, one of our core concepts at our firm is we hustle. And it really is painful to hustle and tee up the deal and then go pause and then, have to backtrack for 6 to 8 weeks on trying to tighten architectural construction, all the things that are giving our clients pause.
And I think just at the end of the day, I kind of touch on it, but transparency, like even if it's good or bad news, like you guys are needing to go back to your clients and let them know.
Sure.
And so like the more information we can give you, or even just high level of what's going on and touching base, that's what's important to help with timing of these deals. So, so on to the next. What do you see tenants requesting the most from a building?
Two-pronged, space and building.
Yeah.
The space needs to be more like their home. I mean, coming out of the last 2 years, it needs to be comfortable, relaxed, open, casual, and have those little lounge areas, or, if you're going to take a brain break, go plug in, watch TV somewhere, but just have something that feels a lot like what we just went through for the last 18 to 24 months of working from home. And then a building, Ryan said it earlier about this flight to quality. That's the real deal right now. We've had multiple clients that have really chosen to spend more money at a new building because it is fully amenitized. Don't even know if that's a word, but I think it is.
No, it is.
We're going to go with it.
You're right.
But the amenities in the building are golf simulators, tenant lounge, fitness center, outdoor lounge space, all the things that make a connected building for the tenant to go, I'm tired of being in the space. I'm going to go down to the lobby, plug into the Wi-Fi down there and chill and work. And so, for the decision makers, your employees are still in the building. What do you care about them being in the space? And so I think that's what a lot of CEOs and C-level employees are thinking of right now, is going, okay, well, how do I get people back to the office? And that starts with the building and the amenities.
Yeah. I think that's a real question that the C-suite is trying to wrestle with right now. Is we went through the pandemic and had all the issues with, we lost culture. You said it earlier, and how do we get that culture back? And so how do we lure our workers back into the office? And like Grant said, we have to have a space that's comfortable, that they want to work in, and that they're excited about coming to. And so
like a hybrid style. That's what you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we see, and I know it wasn't the question, but I mean, we see everybody doing fully back. Nobody's really back. And then the bookend, let's take Monday, Fridays off, but you're going to be in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because, even us, we're decision makers of the firm, and we have to decide how we're going to implement our own culture and how many days a week we're going to be in the office. And ours is a little unique to where we don't have to be in the office because we're usually on site with our clients. So we utilize our office space less than most, but it's a really big challenge right now. We're trying to figure out how to help decision makers overcome and get there.
Yeah, we see a lot of that, involvement in recruitment and retention, creating that fear of missing out, making sure that the space really reflects the culture like we talked about, but also getting people in to, have training, have mentorship, really build those relationships and have an investment from the employees in their company. And that just completely facilitates the whole retention conversation. And how do you get people in? It's making them comfortable, making it exciting, basically having them have a desire to come back into the office. And then that whole conversation that I know all of those C-suite people are having issues with, of if somebody's not visible to me, then what is going to drive me to have them move up the ladder more quickly than someone that I do see on a regular basis?
Right. Yeah, and then you have jobs like tech and development that are non-critical they're critical to the daily function of the business, but they don't need to be in the office. They prefer, it's kind of like the dim lighted area so they can, headphones on. And so I think a lot of those functions, the C-level people will say, okay, those employees, they don't need to be in the office as long as they're getting their jobs done and they're developing best in class content, quality, whatever it is. What do I care? And do I really need space for them? And so this is a challenge right now.
Or do you just need collaborative space, like touchdown space,
Right.
really to come in real quick if you do have like a meeting or you need to meet with someone on the team? Too.
Yeah. So, and that goes back to some of the building amenities. So if you're going to have less space for yourself, the building needs to have some kind of conference facility where you could have a larger meeting.
So then going to that, the next question, it kind of feeds off of that. Are existing tenants keeping their same amount of square footage? Or are you seeing an increase or a decrease?
I thought about this one. I don't know. I've flipped the coin. What do you think? I flipped the coin on this one.
What do you think? I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. Well, we're seeing both. Like everyone. So the pendulum swing, right? So pandemic, everybody went home. Everyone thought we'll never need office space again. Done with office space. And so then it was a comeback of the pendulum swung back with, hey, we need some kind of space. Do we need the same square footage that we had? Probably not. We could probably send some of our teams to work from home on a more permanent basis. And so if we're going to take less square footage, well then, yes, let's increase the quality. Pricing remains the same on a monthly basis. If we can go have a nicer building, less square footage. So we're seeing a good bit of that. We're also seeing some that don't do that.
Yeah. No, look, here's one thing for certain. No matter the health protocols of the United States and the world, we are back to full heavy desking. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We've represented the full spectrum of political decision makers from liberal to conservative in both sets are saying we want to utilize our space efficiently, and we're getting back to the office, and we're going to put everybody in bare desks, elbow to elbow, and we're going to fit 50 people in 7,000 to 8,000 feet. So for the people that are saying we're going to come back and create a culture in the office, there's none of this, okay, we got to have dividers. And I mean, I think I'm speak just for a lot of the people we represent is that a lot of people are just over the fear factor of what we just went through, and that we're powering through saying, okay, I'm not going to go heavy walled office and take 40% more square feet because I'm worried. I think we're better in an open and team environment. So I really think it is a hybrid of, we've had some clients cut space, we've had some expand, and then we've certainly had everybody saying densification is not going away. So
Right. Or kind of making transition from, hey, I was in an office building, now I'm going to be in an industrial building because it makes more sense for what I'm doing.
Sure.
So
I think that all goes back to, the whole part of the conversation where we need to figure out exactly what, the target points are. If the tenant is looking to have everyone back in the office, whether it's, 1 day a week or 5 days a week, you need to have a spot for every single person. And if you don't have a spot for every single person, you're never going to reach that goal.
I feel like this next year will be a really interesting year in office, just to see. I mean, it's incumbent upon the decision makers for all companies to draw the line in the sand and say, you're coming back. Now, I get it. Over the last 18 to 24 months, everybody was afraid. The biggest companies obviously were lawsuit ridden if they forced somebody to come back and they got sick. But at some point, this will be fully in our rear view. I think we're getting there. And then I think that's really going to change the way the office is viewed. Right now, I mean, it's still kind of tiptoeing out of that period of time. But, these hybrid functions will likely only last for so long too, until somebody goes, what are we doing that for? Why everybody needs to be in. Yeah. And I don't know, again, that we're there yet, but that is the next step of returning to what we consider normal in 2019.
Yeah.
right.
But, and I think that will be the new normal is probably work from home on Friday, maybe work from home on Monday, pick a day in the week. But to get people back into the office, like Grant said, is super important, especially for those small to mid-sized companies that weren't necessarily set up to have everyone work from home. They weren't set up from a technology perspective necessarily. So
Yeah, and that's huge technology right now in space, and finding it the appropriate amount of technology that you need. Even going to that though, I think even pre-COVID, like before COVID, a lot, at least some of my friends' companies, like they had half-day Fridays, or they would I think we were already kind of trending in that way in a general. So I do kind of see it kind of staying more of kind of a hybrid, but at the same time, depending on your role and what you do in the company, it is always good to be there. So.
And it all depends on the size of the company
Exactly.
as well.
Sure.
Global companies were already doing hoteling on a large scale basis prior to the pandemic, and reducing their square footage and kind of putting people in hubs to make sure that they could take advantage of the square footage that they had. But I think we are seeing more of the smaller tenants kind of consider the hoteling aspect. But like I said, if the goal is to have everyone back, then you really do need to create a spot for them in the office. And it doesn't have to be an office or a desk, but it has to be a work zone or a workplace that they can plug in, they can get their work done efficiently, and they feel like they're part of the office.
Yeah, I think even pre-pandemic, it was either Chase or some large company that had their desk pods, and you never had a dedicated desk, so you can put your picture out on the desk, and you had a locker, and you just go plug in and work at that desk. And so there are a lot of big companies that were already doing that. That's just a model that's really not effective for the majority of the companies we represent, unless you're big tech or a global company, like you said. But I definitely think with rising rates across the board, across the country, specifically in Texas, everybody's going to be concerned with how do I conserve space and make it the most efficient for their use.
So kind of ending it on this question, and I know we've kind of touched on certain things throughout this conversation with it, but what is the trend that tenants are requesting for recruitment and retention? What do they come and ask you, kind of best scenario for those?
It's something that we touched on earlier, and we can jump off it again. And just it first depends on the company and what they're trying to achieve. So, I mean, we represent all different types of industries with decision makers that want to keep the office fun and casual and hip and cool, and then some that just like, hey, like this is a place to come get your work done. I mean, we can have our lounge couch, but like we don't need to have like all the distractions. And so I think it's really our job up front to dig in, what do you want in this space? And then we educate a lot of our clients in what we see as the latest trends in buildings to see if that hits home with them. And a lot of it just goes back to, okay, well, our advice, and I was on a call yesterday with a CEO, and she said, I've been in this building for 8 years. I'd like to just make it easy. I don't want to have to deal with the move. And I just said, if you can listen to what I'm about to say, I'm not trying to compel you to go do something, but it would really help for you to go tour 4 or 5 buildings. They're a little bit more expensive, but what you'll get is X, Y, and Z. And I think you just need to spend 2 hours. And if at the end of that you say, great, no thanks, fine. We did our job of fully exploring it. And so I think that's a broad way to answer your question, but it's just different for every client. And the latest trends are just everything that we see of the comforts of working from home, like I said earlier. And I don't know if you have anything else, but that's...
The only other thing we didn't touch on earlier, I think, was the amenities around the building.
Sure.
So we've seen decision makers just trying to decide between 2 buildings, and one has all the restaurants within walking distance and one does not. And they choose the one with the amenities around the building every time. So that's something we didn't touch on earlier, I think.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that as well. It's the campus feel over the office building feel. The office building of, the 80s is no longer valid. Everybody wants the convenience and the walkability to, not have to get in their car and go drive somewhere just to get lunch.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And yoga outside.
Last thing, you sparked a thought on the 80s. We have seen one building specifically from the 80s brought to 2022, and our client that had the decision to stay in the building of the 80s or go to the building of the 80s that was brought to 2022, he decided to move next door.
Yeah.
And so that is a huge trend that will continue. And one of our peers and colleagues that trained and mentored us in the business said, I don't know how Class B buildings will survive if the owner does not, bring these amenities forward to now. Otherwise, you're going to just continue to see this.
Absolutely. Well, we're seeing a huge influx of that, redoing lobbies or what can we add to this? Because, at the same time, they're having to compete within their own Class B market and not try and go up to the A to raise rates that high, but also be competitive in themselves. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and they may not fully amenitize, but they may do, kind of a scaled back version where you have like a training room and a grab and go and a lounge all in one, rather than, taking over quite a bit of space in the building that, would be leasable. So that's definitely something that's happening in those Class B buildings that will get people back into those buildings.
Sure. No, it's important. I mean, everybody needs to have a cost alternative. I mean, the market begs for it, but everything's rising in rates. And so you see a $5 a square foot delta, and that's where we're seeing decision makers go, well, that's not that much. And that's why they'll make the jump. But if it's $10 a foot, if it's 15, I mean, Uptown, Deep Ellum, all those prices at 70 gross, you're going, okay, it's a big time business decision. So
Absolutely.
Well, we really appreciate you guys taking the time with us today and being on our podcast.
Such a great discussion.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Really enjoyed
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for tuning in to Enterprise Design's Industry Insights video podcast. Please follow us and subscribe to our channel or visit us on our website at enterprisedesign.com.
And look for our teaser video highlighting the next episode. We look forward to seeing you then.